Okay, well, let's get started, and I'm sure people will join more people will join when they get a chance. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, which is dealing with the challenges of operating a regional business or a startup in the midst of COVID-19. My name's Hugh Darwell, and I'm in of the webinar today. We have three speakers, each of whom will speak for 5 minutes or so to give their unique perspectives of operating during COVID-19. We will have ample time for questions, so please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to send us your questions for our panelists. Our first speaker today will be Martin Crawford. Martin is one of the most experienced corporate services executives in Asia. In January 2019, he co-founded Acclime, an Asia-focused premier corporate services provider. Under his leadership, Acclime has built a strong presence in 7 markets in the region: Hong Kong, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, with a regional team of over 200 professionals. Prior to Acclime, Martin was the Group CEO of Vistra from 2009 to 2018, where he built the firm from a small regional player to be among the top 3 global corporate services providers. He expanded the geographic reach from 5 to 46 jurisdictions, executed 35 mergers and acquisitions, and achieved outstanding returns for the 3 successive PE owners of the firm. Following Martin will be Chris Pennicott. Chris is the Corporate Director of Operations at the Executive Centre, Asia's premium and largest flexible workspace provider, with over 135 locations in 32 cities across 14 countries. His role incorporates oversight of all centre operations, delivery of service revenue targets, driving service quality to improve member satisfaction, the introduction of new products and services to meet dynamic demand, and management of around 500 teammates. Chris joined the Executive Centre in 2012, and since then the business has tripled in size and has opened in multiple new countries and cities in the region. Chris has lived and worked in Hong Kong for 20 years, helping to manage projects, teams, and businesses throughout Asia Pacific. Our final speaker will be Hsien. Hsien is President of Take 5 People Limited, a human resources management system software development and solutions provider focusing on Greater China and the Asia Pacific region. He has spent more than 20 years in the business software application industry. Hsien has extensive experience in developing application software systems, both in human resources and finance. He has been instrumental in developing and designing the Take 5 People HRMS suite of products, which utilize dashboarding and mobile applications to streamline HR management and improve decision-making. In the webinar today, we will be examining the way that COVID-19 has changed the way businesses operate. Businesses around the region are now more receptive to co-working spaces than committing to a long-term office lease. Businesses are now seeking operation mobility through working from home, which consequently means coming up with different ways to interact with clients and to keep employees engaged. How does this trend and change of behaviour impact your company and the way it operates? Martin, let's hear from you first.
Thank you, Hugh, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to have you participating today, and particularly to have our guests with us today in Alsen and Chris, whom we work with from time to time. As Hugh mentioned, Acclime is a relatively new business, and we are also in the category of providing services to companies, but also ourselves are a regional business that is obviously facing the challenges that COVID-19 represents. Our role in that sort of ecosystem is to help companies expand from their home country to other countries around the region, which is why in a relatively short time, we have established a base in a number of countries and will continue to do so. And I think, although we didn't have any foreknowledge of COVID at the time, I think that has been a good strategy, because what we see is clients looking to rely more heavily on corporate services partners like us than perhaps they have in the past. And whereas in the past, they may see it as more of a functional need. Can I do some compliance work? Can I get some accounting work done, or some paralegal company secretarial work? Now what we're seeing is a dramatic increase in the nature of the work we're doing, up the value chain of responsibility. And I think, as we'll talk about in this seminar, that presents challenges for our clients, but it also represents opportunities not just for us, but taking part today. So just a couple of examples of that, and we all know the statistics, but we rely heavily on the foreign direct investment into and around the region. And we all know that this travel lockdown and the effect on GDP of COVID is going to have an impact on that. I think United Nations Commission for Trade and Development suggesting a 40% decline in interregional FDI, foreign direct investment, in 2020 and 21. That's obviously going to have a challenge on any executives that need to travel. It's going to have any cross-border M&A deals, capital market deals, all of which drive our sort of business, are going to be impacted by that. So that's on the downside. On the positive side, we are seeing, as I mentioned, a very different role that we're playing for clients. So in the absence of them being able to travel, we're now doing things like inspecting suppliers, acting as a transfer agent or a process agent for transactions, managing payments on behalf of people, physically attending meetings for clients to make sure that the counterparty is doing their bit in the absence of the client being able to travel. And obviously we are also grappling with remote working, with not wanting to commit long-term to long-term leases and things like that. But my view is that it's a good time to be a trusted intermediary for our clients. And I'm sure that's true also for Chris and for Alsen. So look, I don't want to go on too much. I'm happy to answer any questions, obviously, and take part in the debate. But it is definitely for us a plus and a minus. On the plus side, we see a lot more opportunities to do more sorts of work for our clients. And on the negative side, obviously, like anyone, we're facing the challenges of operating a business during these times. I myself, sitting here in quarantine in Hong Kong, know how that feels. So yeah, I'd like to hand back to you, Hugh, and I look forward to taking part in the debate.
Thank you, Martin. We're just having a couple of technical difficulties in getting Chris on the line. So I think next we'll move to Alsen for his views on how his business is handling the current circumstances.
Thanks, Hugh, and thanks, Martin, to invite us, myself, to join this panel. I think this is a very topical issues that everybody been discussing, living through it last few months. In many ways, Take 5 as a regional payroll software company, we're quite lucky because ourselves, our DNA is regional offices. We do have quite a lot of people working remotely, and the people have been quite a lot of staff been working at home. So for the company on the operation point of view, we have been deployed many cloud-based technology to help us operating quite well. So we have, we have many we're using CRM, finance, project management, or deploy our internal HR to help the company to operate, normally in current situation. But with this pandemic, we suffer equally, or I personally might feel more than anybody else, is by all this postponement of new businesses and the project delays. So this, I think we all own the same boat. now for us, now operationally, we're lucky we are not affected as much. But on the customer client-facing area, we suffered as much as everybody else. For us, mostly if our direct sales opportunity activities, our project-related activity, like our client deploying our system, we have to go over there for the requirement study and customer training, and then we had to do the project management status report meeting and the offline marketing. Those traditionally we have done face-to-face, but now we just have to using a different venue. Mostly of course, now we're using the video conferencing as what we're doing now. So a lot of change of our own behavior and working with customers. Even now, many Asian countries are kind of breaking this lockdown. People move more freely, but we still see the challenges still moving forward as a regional company, where some of the market is not as open as others. In the new normal situation, company really need to deploy this work from home enabled technology to help them to really make this conduct our business in the normally or virtually. So in many ways for us, we see a lot of uptake, the increasing demand of this work from home enabled technology, especially on the mobile area. Like for us, for the HR payroll software company, and we see a lot of requirement or consultations on the for new staff onboarding, staff clocking in and out, e-leaves, leave applications, claims, employee self-service on the mobile. So what we see is time changes, opportunity arise for every business. And in a nutshell, just basically we feel we're lucky, we are equipped to face the challenging in this post-pandemic period. So this is a few points of view I'd like to share with everybody, and then back to you, Hugh. Hugh, you are on mute.
Yes, I'm mute. Schoolboy error. Thanks, Alsen. Now I think we've got Chris on the phone now. Chris, are you there?
Yeah, hi, Hugh.
Great. Perhaps we could have your perspectives now on how your company is handling the COVID-19 pandemic and the change in the way businesses are operating.
Sure. Firstly, my apologies to everybody. Sometimes technology doesn't work and my Zoom isn't working at the moment, but I'll keep trying as this webinar progresses. And secondly, a big thank you to Martin and the Acclime team for inviting us to share our thoughts. And it's a real pleasure to be here. I wanted to begin really just to sort of, as a brief intro to the Executive Centre, or to TEC as it's widely known, and then look at one of the key questions that I think will be touched on in today's session. Hugh has already elaborated on sort of the scale of the business. Sorry, May, if you can go to the next slide, which shows some of the graphics and data around the current status and size and position of the business. We're a truly regional business throughout Asia Pacific, from Tokyo in the east to Dubai in the west, Beijing in the north to Melbourne in the south, and most major hubs in between. Managing over 3 million square feet, and I think the number changes on a regular basis, obviously currently about 27,000 members. But actually it's the final fact or set of data on that page I wanted to touch on initially, because and this is the NPS score. Some of you may or may not be aware of sort of the importance of what this is, but it's basically a snapshot of your customers and what they think of you as a business. Yes, we are a flexible workspace provider, but to me, we're actually a customer service business that uses the real estate as a platform to deliver this. So we focus strongly on it, and our intention is that members can focus on what they're doing in making their business successful rather than relying on what we're doing as their space provider. Now, we've run it for about 5 or 6 years, and every year so far, touch wood, we've rated above 60, which, as far as we're aware, is well ahead of any industry competitors globally, and also puts us up with some of the very best and biggest brands around the world. And then May, you can go to the next slide. So, but what is it we actually offer? Again, I don't want to label on this, but just to sort of run you through the 4 or 5 major products that we have, ranging from what we term the enterprise products, which is a fully customized office solution for the larger corporates or the larger office requirements over a medium to long term, through the traditional private offices and the co-working spaces, all the way down to the virtual office, which is catering generally to the smaller businesses or to new market entrants who are looking for professional address as a starting point, supplemented with the support or the first-class support that we can provide. On top of that, obviously, we have the meeting rooms, the conferences, and the event products for usage throughout. Now, in terms of directly answering the question how this COVID-19 situation has impacted our business, yes, and as with Alsen and as with Martin, yes, there has been a positive and a negative, but I want to initially here just sort of elaborate on one point, which is the next slide, May, which is to preempt what I think will be raised, and that's relating to the suggested increase in demand for flex space as a result. And here what I'm doing on this slide is really highlighting some of the compelling reasons why going flexible is possibly more important and relevant today than ever before. The reality is corporate real estate strategies, corporate real estate people working in businesses of all sizes are looking at what is the best option for them today, whether that's keeping their CapEx expenditure within check, whether it's looking for more flexible lease terms, whether it's looking for greater flexibility in how they can use their workspace, adapting to the social distancing norms that exist today, as well as what might exist in the future. And obviously, as a result, particularly right now, the ability to scale up or scale down in these times without being hindered by excessive overheads. And in the opportunity to work in multiple locations, as you're probably aware, many of the flex space providers have multi-locations in a given city, and that provides an added flexible option for all businesses if they're part of the community that is the executive centre. So for us, the arguments are compelling, but the reality is, May, if you can go to the next slide, it's relevant at all times. Yes, today, right now, is an extraordinary event, but even in a normal economic cycle, the same stages fundamentally exist and are applicable. During the economic declines, going flexible gives companies more ability to renew rates and space in a much faster cycle because, frankly, you're not tied into the long-term contract. During a recovery phase, going flexible allows companies to scale up their businesses as needed with the space requirements that fit that need. And then obviously during the good times, going flexible allows companies to mitigate the long-term risks of traditional leases and as a result better manage what their short-term commitments really are. And then finally, before I head back to you, I just wanted to give you on the next slide just an example of how this can benefit any organization, no matter how big or small. So company A has a dilemma. They need office space. but they have reality. They have no idea what their headcount needs are going to be. Frankly, in this world right now, in 3 months' time, in let alone 18 months or 3 years down the line. And if actually you extrapolate this out further, what it really highlights is that many businesses are signing the traditional long-term offices based on a headcount guesswork, frankly, because they're not really sure. But that's what they do. So the options really are for, company A to go for the fixed space, for the full-term commitment with a capex-heavy spend on a traditional lease, or go for the scalable option with the flexibility of commitment, minimal capex banded, and frankly, only really paying for what you want. So again, for us, the solution is an obvious one. Are we seeing a greater push to this at this minute? I think we're too early for empirical data to say that we are, but anecdotally, I know there is. We're hearing more demand from companies big and small, and we think obviously the COVID situation has accelerated this push to take up a more flexible space. So if you're a business with an office need, you know where to reach us. So I'll leave it at that for now, Hugh, and hand it back. And hopefully I've sort of answered partly some of the questions that you're asking.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate your insights. So now's the time to ask our panelists some questions. There's a Q&A button on the bottom of your screen on the sort of the right-hand side of the control panel at the bottom. So perhaps you could type in questions there, and I can ask the panelists. And while we're waiting for that, we thought we'd just run a quick poll of the attendees in the webinar today. And we've got 2 questions that perhaps you could put up on the screen, and we'd like you to vote on each of these questions as to what you're doing in the current pandemic. And we'll leave that open for about 30 seconds or so, and then have a look at the results. But in the meantime, also, if you have questions, please type them into the Q&A box. Okay, so maybe another 10 seconds or so for leave the poll questions open. And I think we'll close them off now and just see what sort of results we've come up with. So the first question being, given the recent pandemic, are you still planning to expand your business in Asia? 68% of you say yes, which is good news for I think the 3 businesses who are on the call. So that's good to see that people are still maintaining a positive attitude despite the pandemic. And then in terms of alternative solutions to COVID for your company, outsourcing 42%, co-working space 42% as well, and as most of you look as though you're going to be looking at automating manual functions, which I think someone from Microsoft said that we'll see 2 years worth of development technology in the next 2 months. So I think that bears that out. So we've got a few. Well, first, Alsen, have you got any comments on those results?
I think this is very positive. Even for us, we're looking into expanding our operation as well, because as we all know, the supply chain is changing. Manufacturing is shifting much more to the Southeast Asia. And then for us, as a regional payroll software vendor, and I'm pretty sure for Chris and for Martin, those are the market that we set our sight on for sure. And I really like see people really open up for the the outsource options and the co-working space. Those are the area that ourselves, really enjoy. From the cost saving and the quality of work is better than, management need to manage those type of work areas. So we leave to the professional to provide the better services for us. So ourselves, we outsource our payroll, our accounting to all our market, which is outsourced them. It's much easier, effective for us.
Could I add to that, Hugh? We're obviously in the outsourcing business as well. Clients come to us for anything from company secretarial, accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, compliance services. The sort of trends we're seeing is that because of the COVID, accelerating the trend towards more a rationalization of vendors that they want to work with. So if they're existing in, let's say, 10 markets in Asia, they're probably traditionally working with maybe 4 or 5 or 6 suppliers or service providers in those markets. But because of the limitations of physically visiting operations, also the raising standard that's required from a corporate governance standpoint, they are consolidating the number of service providers. So companies like Take 5, like TC, and like ourselves are now pitching for managing these services in multiple markets, and that gives the client much more control, particularly when they can't physically look in an eye and knock on the door. And the other thing we see, and I think Alsen touched on this, is that what we're seeing is a switch from multinational companies relying on single country for supply. So, China has been the manufacturing base for so many of the European and American countries. And they have, over the years, fine-tuned their supply chains to be, perfectly just in time. So, the ships arrive exactly when the warehouses need the products and get shipped to the folks. What we're seeing now is the move away from efficiency into now resiliency. So that if there is a single country risk, they're then deciding they need something in another country, perhaps. So, people are calling this China +1. And I think the +1 is definitely benefiting countries like Vietnam, like Indonesia, like maybe Bangladesh, etc., where companies are just not willing to put all their eggs in one basket, even if they have to carry higher inventories or have greater cost by having multiple sourcing, but they just do not want the risk of single line of supply. So I think that's good for all our businesses, and if the trend towards outsourcing continues and the trend towards China +1 continues, I'm sure we've got a very viable and busy future.
Thanks, Martin. We've got a few questions coming in now, so I think the first one was probably directed to Chris, which is, aside from not having a long-term commitment, is there any financial benefit to use a co-working space rather than signing a lease, given that leasing rates are dropping right now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think, to be honest, I think the reality is also that, our own leasing rates will also have to be flexible, given the current climate. That will, of course, vary market to market, country to country, but I think as a rule of thumb, we also have to be adaptable in what we're trying to achieve, as well as any traditional landlord would. Yeah, I mean, a traditional lease ties you in generally 5 to 10 years with very little flexibility. With TEC, as an example, for an office space, the minimum requirement we have is down to 1 month. So immediately there's the more flexibility in terms of the actual terms that you're dealing with. And then obviously with that, as you as a business grow, shrink, expand, we are in a position to be able to cater to that demand, generally speaking. Whether that's you can stay with TC by adding, a couple of desks here, a couple of desks over there, and expand with us, or shrink as the case may be. Again, you probably find it more challenging with a traditional office lease. CapEx obviously is a very large item, financial item. If you're taking a traditional lease with a landlord or traditional landlord, there is a significant CapEx investment required to fit out the space, to furnish the space, and manage the space thereafter. With us, it's all ready-made. You just have to literally walk in, and the desk and everything else is there. Obviously, it is adaptable. We can change it if you require, but that is a significant investment that you don't have to worry about as a business moving into a new space. And again, going back to that flexibility in my example in the presentation, as you're growing or your business is changing, you can adapt your space accordingly, and you pay different rates based on what you're actually using, rather than if you think you need 30 spaces today, but you've only got 20 people because you expect your company to expand, you're paying for that space today, right? You don't have the flexibility with a traditional space to adapt the headcount or the space that you're given as freely as you will with TEC. So those are just a couple of examples of how the different spaces work and the benefits of going flexible versus traditional.
Thanks, Chris. I mean, Martin, perhaps one for you, just to follow on to that. Your is expanding around the region and acquiring businesses around the region. Presumably, most of them already have office space, but in some jurisdictions, maybe you need more office space. How are you looking at that situation at the moment? I think you're on mute.
So far, thank you. So far, we've been okay. We did a number of small deals in Hong Kong, and we've consolidated into our own office in Hong Kong. But that decision was made pre-COVID, and although we haven't, we're certainly not downsizing our team. We're growing our team, but it does make you look at the rent versus buy decision very carefully. And in Singapore, for example, we know we're coming to an end of a lease. We also know we want to get a bit bigger in Singapore. And I can assure you that I'll be having a chat to Chris about, how can we do that in a way where we're not locking into long-term costs when we know we could well need more space, going forward. So I think in this day and age, and we see that in a rising market as well as a falling market, you do need the flexibility, even if there's a premium on the cost to wind up or wind down the available space. So yeah, I would concur with what he's saying.
Okay, thanks. I think one question here for Alsen, that you mentioned earlier that clients are sort of delaying in making a decision whether to use services or not. What do you think their real concern is? Why are they delaying decisions rather than jumping in now?
I think it's the uncertainty, the virus, the pandemic. There's no cure, and economic, political. There's quite a lot of issues. But we see the really interesting changes now. It's like in China, they opened up in April. The whole market is so dynamic. It's moving so much. We are engaged in so many opportunities, and then we can't wait. Just closing deal. We hope we have enough resources to support them. But when the decision maker is outside of Asia, like Europe or US, I think this buy or making decision become delay, because over there, I think they still in the uncertainty is over there, hovering over the decision makers at the moment.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I think another question following on from that, and the way that you bring in new clients in this current environment, and this is a question for all three of you, I think. With the travel restrictions, traditionally the way of sourcing new business is to get in front of people and convince people of your qualities and why they should be using your services rather than someone else's. Obviously, that's not possible at the moment. So how are you approaching new business generation? Perhaps, Martin, you could start with this.
Make sure I'm unmuted first. Yeah, well, I think we have a high repeat business phenomenon in our sector. A lot of our clients continue to have needs in other markets, or they're requiring other services. So we're not entirely dependent on new business. We get new existing business, if that makes sense, from existing clients. But in terms of the new business, you do need folks to adapt. You need to obviously use a lot more digital media. You're relying heavily on intermediaries as well to introduce clients, word of mouth. It doesn't always require a face-to-face visit. And it is amazing, as we've all watched our kids adapt to online education. We're all doing Zoom calls. We managed to fill a diary every day with Zoom or video conference calls. I'm sure we'll all get used to doing more remote business. And one of the obstacles that we used to face was getting a bank account open for our clients, and it required people to physically come to Hong Kong or Singapore and visit a branch. Even the banks are now saying, look, we're happy to do it through video and with showing photos with passports and all those sort of things. So I think people will adapt. Life will go on. The need for economic recovery will obviously overtake any inconvenience. And yeah, I think I'm very positive about the future, particularly here in Asia.
So it sounds like things in a way are becoming more efficient, which is a good thing.
They are indeed, and I think if people are already not on the cloud, doing things virtually, digitally, then they're gonna get left behind.
Yep. Alsen?
Yeah, I would. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to totally agree with what Martin said. I think obviously we're in a similar position where we're not reliant on new business all of the time, yet we do have turnover on a regular basis, which we do want to refill. The reality is we've had to go a little bit more digital. But at the same time, there has been a slight slowdown in companies or businesses who are making those longer term decisions, right? So we've had to adapt to that. But at the same time, if the new customers are not making decisions, we're working more closely with our existing customers to make sure they're satisfied, to make sure they're committed, to make sure they're happy to continue for the whatever the foreseeable future might be, so that there isn't any drop or shortfall in occupancy from us as a business. But logically, we've had to go digital. We've had to, as Martin says, use Zoom 1,000 times, even though I can't use it today. But that is the way of the world as we live in today. And, my kids have also been adapting to it at school, and everyone else is in all their businesses. So I would reiterate what Martin said.
Okay, thanks. Well, perhaps, Alsen, I'll move on to another question for you. And that is, participants are interested in the outlook for M&A activities in 2020 and into early 2021, and also whether you think it's, or companies are looking at relocating certain of their operations to COVID-free countries, like New Zealand, for example. Will people sort of look to move some of their physical activities to safer places?
Actually, this question I will submit to Martin. I think Martin can answer much better than I can. He has been doing M&A work, all these years, pretty much throughout his career. So I think he has more authority and experience in this area than I can.
Over to you, Martin.
Thanks for dobbing me in, Alsen. But no, I think markets will continue to consolidate. I think in certain sectors that will require M&A to happen. And it's, as I mentioned before, it's happening in our sector of corporate services because clients wanting to single source. So if you have a client and they want to use someone else in a different market, you're running a risk of losing that client. So you have a choice. You can either expand there yourself or you can join a platform like an Acclime, for example, where you can serve that client within the family. Regarding the safe countries, and I know we're joined by a guest from New Zealand, John, whom I know well. Yeah, full credit to New Zealand, Australia, and hopefully they'll be one of the world leaders in these travel bubbles that we're going to see. And definitely we would consider expanding to those countries where things will get back to normal much faster, all other things being equal. So I think it will happen.
Okay. Okay, Alsen, I've got a different one for you, and you can't throw this to anyone else.
Okay.
Working from home is a new normal for people now. In terms of it's going to impact productivity, up or down. How do you empower and motivate staff?
Okay. As I indicated earlier, we're quite lucky because the DNA of our company, we have a lot of people working from home, and then we work as a team cross continent. Now, amazingly, we're a small company. We have people located in Asia, Europe, Africa, and Australia. So we are very much used to working remotely. And then the key thing for us is we need to train our manager have a different behaviors. Now we have this model in the company say motivation need to come from the positive and the constructive feedback from all around in the company. So whether people working from home or not. So everything we need to be positive and constructive. And then on the practices area that what we have done, throughout last 10 years, we set a very clear priority. Now, define the priority for every staff. We're using this old and proven method of 4-5. That everybody has 4 objectives, 4 failures, 4 successes. No, sorry, 4-5 is 5 objectives for the period, and the 5 successes, and 5 failures, and 5 objectives for the next period. So everybody know what we're gonna manage them with. And then we need to reach out regularly to people. As people, we don't see their face as much than before. And then we want to keep all the meeting very short and sweet, because using virtual meetings, people lost their focus, they're doing something else, they might play with their dogs, cats, all the stuff. And then we want to ensure the communications even without any update. The communication channel is there, people just reach out, call is there, and people are there, actually you can reach out to them anytime, any minute. So this is how we deal with these issues.
Okay, and
Chris, can I jump?
Yes. If you could step in there, that would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are various stages of certainly in this work from home or frankly work from anywhere situation we're now in, and the way that sort of the approach we've taken, frankly, is to be the first sort of couple of weeks, the first period of time, is all just about making sure that they're happy, making sure that they're healthy, making sure that they're feeling safe and comfortable. The reality is, I mean, I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think the reality is most people will down tools initially when they started to work from home. They'll be a bit more relaxed. They won't be as focused as perhaps they would be in the office. But I think just showing them the empathy and that you actually care about them as individuals is a very important first step. Then it becomes a bit of a novelty, so the novelty phase. Okay, I'm now working from home. I've got a screaming baby over there. I've got a dog over there. I've got other things going on. Again, I'm probably not as efficient as I should be. But then it comes down to about communication. How are you as a manager, whether you're in the office or you're in your home, how are you communicating with them? How are you making them feel? And then engaging them with the task as much as possible as they would be doing in the office. I mean, for examples with us, you know, we've had some of our centres across India and Australia basically closed for 2 months. I mean, we've been open, but you know, none of the clients are prepared or were prepared to come in. And as a result, obviously, we went down to a skeleton staff. But those people who are working from home still had to engage, still had work to do, and it's a matter of making sure that those communication channels are open and they have the tools and the wherewithal to then communicate with their clients, even though they're not in the office. Their clients are also working, they're working from home. How do we make sure that we as a provider, whatever that provision is, and make sure that those clients are continuing to be as productive as possible? That's sort of the approach that we've taken. And I mean, our perspective is that that's been a successful approach. And now that sort of more and more people, our team and our clients are returning to the office, you know, relationships have been built remotely, right? Perhaps that weren't there previously. And that's always a positive step. So I think, you know, but communication is the key.
Yeah, and just following on from that, I think another question that's come in, probably I think for all three of you, which is named the biggest challenge in terms of personnel when managing your regional operations since COVID. Is it A, keeping jobs, or B, a change of work culture? Martin, maybe you could kick off.
Well, we, you know, I think those of us with grey hair have been through, and I'm certainly one of them, have been through, you know, the GFC, the Asian crisis, you know, SARS, all those times. And, you know, we're in the middle of COVID. We probably think this is the worst thing that's ever happened. But, you know, statistically, these things will happen every 20 or 30 years. And so we're not unique in that sense. But if in the minute things get hard, you decide that the one thing you'll do is start to burn the people that work for you, then I think you're not really building a business. And we took a very strong stance from the outset. Doesn't matter how bad this gets, we're not going to downsize, we're not going to lose people, we're not going to cut salaries, we're not going to force people to take leave or anything like that, because when we need those people will be when we come out of this, and for sure we'll come out of this. So we're going to need them pedal to the metal when we come out. We don't want to spoil the relationship now. So I think the culture is probably, of those two choices, the hardest one, because when you're remote, you can't build the sort of water cooler culture. But yeah, we took a very strong stance that we were not going to downsize or take any measures that would impact our people.
Alsen?
Yeah, I think for us it's the same, because when the morale going down, it's very hard to pick it up. For us, how to encourage people, how we deal with this business downturn. So as I believe Chris and Martin mentioned earlier, instead of creating and building on the new business, we will explore working on our existing client to get more modules, to expand more region within the same client, which is much easier. So we build some successes. We need to find successes, actually our big challenges to motivate people and increase the morale throughout the company.
Yep. And Chris?
Yeah, agreed. Similar. I mean, as I said at the very beginning, my take on our business is that we're a customer service business, and if we're getting rid of that customer service capability, we're throwing away the business. So, you know, maintaining current workforce, you know, as much as we can is obviously a priority. For us, you know, there has been the work from home culture in certain markets, but it's not been long term because we've done skeleton staff so that they come in, you know, whether it's once every other day or they do week A and week B, whichever way they've done it. So there hasn't been a complete disconnect between the business and the individuals. So that's been our perspective.
Okay. We're running short of time, so just one more question, I think, for all of you as well, which is on the technology front. That in this time we've all been pretty reliant on technology, especially working from home. How have each of you harnessed the sort of technologies available to keep the businesses going, and in particular, how have you addressed issues like information security to make sure things, you know, if you're working from an office, you have certain security protocols in place. Working from home, maybe not necessarily as strong. So how have you dealt with those issues? Martin, how about you to start with?
Well, we took a strategic decision to go cloud from day one, to go Office 365, Teams, you know, the whole thing, which, and obviously to host all client applications on AWS, I think it is, you know, cloud service. So we were relatively quick to adapt. The main thing we had to do was to buy or lease laptops for some staff that didn't have them at home. But you know, that in hindsight was a good decision, and you know, we're going to just double down on that going forward.
Alsen, how have you been dealing with it?
We took the same measurement of that, so we rely heavily on AWS, and then of course we need to have Cloud to satisfy our China operations and our China customers' needs, and then it has been quite vital for us because we have a regional product teams. Our IP sits a lot on our product development, all that product source codes. Those has been addressed quite well. So during this period of time, I would say, yeah, cloud-based, we've been doing that, and then all those using the AWS and other cloud to host our sensitive information. That's what we've been doing. And we've done that, I think, quite well. We feel comfortable with it. Okay,
yeah, obviously that's very important when you're dealing with people's personal records and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Chris?
Yeah, the same. You know, we as a business, you know, we use 365 products. We host most, as far as I'm aware, most of our applications on AWS as well. And then for actually our clients, obviously some of them, they have their own virtual private networks that they hosted within our centers that they're able to tap into, and we can support them in doing so, whether they're working from home or the coffee shop or whatever it is that they're doing. So I think generally speaking, you know, we as a business have continued as we've always done, and our clients have been given that remote access, which they seem to be very happy with. So I think generally speaking, it's worked quite well.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've covered a fair bit of ground today. Any of the speakers have any sort of final points they'd like to share with the attendees?
I'd just like to thank everyone for taking part from Acclime, Alsen and Chris, and look forward to continuing working with you in the future. And yeah, I think this U, V, or L shape is coming our way, recovery, and you know, we're in the right region of the world to bounce back pretty quick. And I hope that happens quickly. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. I mean, I would mirror Martin's perspective on being in the right part of the world. I think we saw it first, we reacted to it relatively quickly, and I think we're in a good, relatively healthy position to move forward quite strongly.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks Hugh to hosting this this webinar, and thanks all the participants. And hopefully we can follow up with your questions later, and then we can provide more information and share with you our experiences. Thanks.
Okay. And just to wrap up, thank you everyone for attending and being part of our initial webinar. We will have more of these to come, and please stay tuned for those. We'll notify you through the various channels that we have. And thank you in particular to our presenters, Alsen, Martin, and Chris, for their insights on the topic of COVID-19 today. So thank you very much, everyone, and we look forward to speaking with you again quite soon. Thanks.
Cheers.